Alright guys, sorry this video is so late, but what we're going to be talking about are the three presidents of the Roaring Twenties. Like we talked about today, they were Republican, President Harding, President Coolidge, and President Hoover. So all three of those Republican presidents had laissez-faire policies in common. They enacted high protective tariffs that were meant to ensure that U.S. businesses ran strong. Remember, a tariff is a tax on an imported good. Okay, so through this act, remember a law, Tariff Act, it raised taxes to the highest in U.S. history. Now, these are taxes on imports. Also, they lowered taxes on the wealthy. And so all of the tax burden then shifted to the average American. There was also lax enforcement of antitrust laws and regulations. So you see some of those progressive accomplishments start to be diminished during this time period. So the first administration, the Harding administration, happened from 1921 to 1923. President Harding died while he was in office. And but however, before he became president, he ran on a promise to get the U.S. to return to normalcy. What he was saying basically is, after the end of World War I and during the shift of transition and trying to move back to peacetime, he just wanted things to go back to normal, and as did so many Americans. He refused to join the League of Nations. Remember, that was something that Wilson had compromised with the European countries. However, we never joined. He also enacted high tariffs, lower taxes, restricted immigration. This was a big one. There were 3 different immigration acts that were passed. Although he did show tolerance for the Jewish population as well as the African American population. Anti-Semitism, that has to do with prejudice against Jewish people, okay? Semitism, Jewish people. And he also pursued arms reduction in the pursuit of peace. Now, in his administration, unfortunately, he had appointed a lot of personal friends that he knew back from his time as being a senator in Ohio, and these personal friends of his came to be known as the Ohio Gang, okay? And they were indeed corrupt and left a stain on his legacy. The most important to remember is his Secretary of the Interior. Now, what the Secretary of the Interior is supposed to do is protect the lands of the United States, but instead of protecting the lands to the United States, he secretly leased or rented an oil-rich area of government lands at a place called Teapot Dome, Wyoming, to a couple of friends who were pumping oil out of the ground. Now, he was getting kickbacks for this. He was getting money. And this wasn't discovered until after Harding's death in 1923. And unfortunately, these scandals left him with a bad legacy. So you will need to know the Teapot Dome scandal. Make sure that you remember that. And it's the leasing of oil-rich lands by the Secretary of Interior, who was part of Harding's Ohio Gang. Okay. Coolidge administration, really not much to it. After Harding died, he became president, ran for 1 term of his own, so he was president from 1923 to 1929. So he was vice president. He was also a good example of what it was to be honest and thrifty, meaning that he was good with money. He didn't overspend. He didn't speak much in public, so much so that he earned the nickname Silent Cal. He was credited for business expansion, but only because he did so little. Like he never spoke, he never really did anything. And so because of that, laissez-faire was in full effect during his administration. And so because of that, of course, business, when they're not regulated, they're going to be able to expand and profit greatly. Next administration, the Hoover administration, from 1929 to 1923. Herbert Hoover was an engineer and self-made millionaire. And he predicted that if he were elected, that would be the end of poverty in the United States. He believed in a system of rugged individualism, meaning people need to pick themselves up by the bootstraps and do it on their own and not have to worry about any other people. And he's saying that basically in the United States, we have a system of equal opportunities, we have a free education, and that combined with a personal will to succeed, you should be able to succeed in the United States without help. And so that's, your typical Republican idealism. Now, what's ironic about the Hoover administration and going into his presidency when he was predicting the end of poverty, and he had this concept of rugged individualism and that was going to make the country great. Right at the end of his administration is when the Great Depression hit, and people used to sit on the sides of the road, and they would have like little shanty towns where they would have like tents and stuff because they no longer lived in homes. They were basically poor and homeless, and they used to call these areas Hoovervilles because they blamed President Hoover for the Great Depression. Also, whenever people would pull their pockets out of their pants, they would get that little pocket and wave it around and call it the Hoover flag because they would say they're so broke and it's his fault. All right, so those are the 3 presidents. Remember that you have one more video to watch to be ready for tomorrow. Make sure that you have any notes that you may need to fill out the graphic organizer, and we'll see you in the morning.